There are a few more effective ways of fast tracking our drawing improvement than daily or at least regular drawing practice sessions. This lets us create foundations that we then build on bit by bit, but frequently, which is a tremendously powerful learning technique for any new skill, and it especially works well with drawing. And you may be going through my playlist of 10, 15, 20-minute daily drawing exercises to do that have a reference and a demo with a voiceover. But whether you're using that or not, regular practice sessions of drawing are incredibly helpful. So I thought I'd give a few tips as to how we can get the most out of such drawing sessions. The first point is that they do need to be regular. They don't need to be daily, as frequently as possible, but it's better that we start a pace that we can maintain, that can be regular over the long term. There's no point doing 7 in the first week, 3 in the second week, and then it's once a month after that. And it's more helpful for most people to slot these into our weekday routine, simply because we more frequently, more often have a weekday routine because of the other things that we do. That's not to say we can't do these on a weekend, but they may be at different times and on different days. In a similar vein to not trying to start off doing them too often is not to let them become too long. 15, I would say 20 minutes max is important, because once we start going longer than this, then we're going to be tempted to start drawing artworks in our mind rather than doing daily practice. It's important that we keep the mentality of this as practice. These are exercises. It both liberates us, I think, from a lot of pressure of having to have drawings that turn out and that look okay at the end. It also enables us to keep to a short time limit because we're not trying to finish a drawing. And by keeping them short, we're more likely to sit down to do them in our busy schedule. We should choose a standard size for our drawings that's relatively small. I think an A5 sheet of paper is an ideal size to position our practice drawing on. Smaller rather than larger makes a lot of things easier, and it lets us learn them faster and more effectively. Once we've learnt to draw things on a smaller scale, we can then push those skills we've already learnt onto a larger scale at a later date. And as part of drawing on a smaller size, we should consider the pen that we're drawing with. Often I find even a 0.3mm pen too wide for a small scale practice drawing. Even though it's a practice drawing, and even though we may not be doing a whole scene, I think we should always be trying to capture a sense of 3 dimensions and distance in our scene somehow, because we never want to be developing a way of drawing that creates a 2-dimensional, flat, cartoon-like effect, unless that's the effect that we want to have for this particular drawing. Once we finish our practice session, it's important to leave even just a few moments to critique what we've done, to say, does it look okay? Is it what I thought? Have I achieved what I wanted to achieve? Are the things that need to be accurate? We're not trying to put ourselves down, we're trying to get a focus for our next practice session. And if I find a number of things that really aren't working that I can identify in this practice session, then it becomes very helpful to redraw the same thing in the next practice session and build on what I've learned. The things that don't work out are a great focus, a great direction for my next session. I would always, in my critiquing, focus on the perspective angles. And I would do more than just look at them and think, do they look all right? Because it's quite possible I need to develop my skill of assessing if the perspective angles in my drawing match that of my reference. I would place the two side by side and get a pen, line up on my reference with the angle and just slide it horizontally across and measure the angle I've drawn that way for all of the significant perspective angles, and ask myself, are they really close or are they some distance off? And particularly when we draw small scale, a small difference of angle can make a quite noticeable impact on our overall drawing's appearance. I have to learn to be discerning about these angles. And I don't want to get used to accepting angles that aren't quite right, because if I accept mistakes in my daily practice, it will become harder and harder to actually see, to recognize those things that aren't right. I'll get so used to seeing them as I draw them. I've talked at length of the benefit of not seeing ourselves as producing artworks, but as learning to draw. That means that even when we've finished a drawing that might have taken 10 or 15 minutes, we can still use it after that session. We can use it as a starting point for our next session. Maybe we want to explore hatching possibilities, and so we deliberately haven't hatched anything on this drawing. We've worked on other things, accuracy of lines and angles, and I start my next session hatching what I drew in the previous one. And so the whole 15 minutes is given to hatching that I can really become quite adventurous with, but I can also get further in a shorter period of time because I'm not having to draw my starting point for the hatching. But I can take risks, I can try things out because it's not an artwork, it's just a practice drawing. It's not something I even need to keep unless I want to keep it as a reference for future direction. Maybe I'll use it to experiment with sketch marker ink for values even after I've done the hatching. Or maybe I'll use it just to splash around some watercolor and to see what effects I can create and to see if that's something I want to pursue further. Let's get the most value out of these exercises. I think it's helpful to have one main thing that we're focused on for a drawing session before we start drawing. It's hard to have more than one main thing, so let's have one main thing. But it's helpful, I think, to divide our main things into one of two categories. One is to do with form, outline, accuracy, shape, perspective, those things that define the, if you like, physical extremities of what we're drawing and how it looks from this angle. The other area that I think it's helpful to focus on quite explicitly is that of effects. Not so much the shape, the outline, but with whatever shape or outline there is, creating visual effects that add a sense of reality and of drama, of interest. So, not so much the shape of the tree, but how do we create the effect of the foliage? How do we create the effect of crowds? How do we create the effect of the ornamentation on architecture? How do we create the effect of brickwork? How do we create the effect of massed flowers from some distance? Because we can focus on just practicing effects as well as focus on practicing accuracy of perspective, of outlines, of shapes, of form. And it's often the combination, I think, of drawing effects and drawing shape that when we bring them together helps to create the effect of form. Remember, three-dimensionality and distance is, I think, in the end, an effect to be created by the marks we choose to use. If you've been finding these helpful, please remember the like button. But I think it's also important that we have our reference ready before we start. And to be sure of that, I think it's helpful to always have 3 or 4 or 5 stacked up waiting for future sessions. The worst thing would be if we've put time aside to do 15 minutes drawing, but it takes us 10 minutes to find a reference and then we don't have time. Or we're feeling rushed because we don't have as much time as we thought we would have. So a little bit of pre-planning when we're not doing drawing exercise, but finding things that we can draw and making sure they're the sorts of things that we know we need to practice. I hope my daily drawing practice videos in some way do this for you, but there'll be things you need to learn that I may not have a video for. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope this was helpful. If you are doing daily drawing practice or regular drawing practice 2, 3, 4 times a week even, then I hope some of these thoughts are going to make that time more productive. But look, whatever you're drawing, however you're drawing it for whatever purpose and however often you draw it, still make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.